The bill passed. It's now under review by the courts, and what the courts have said is, we're going to look at the facts ourselves and make a determination. And one court, basically in San Francisco, said, "Well, we disagree with Congress." This is the kind. I would argue this is the kind of judicial fiat that we see. That Congress spends lots of times in hearings and gathering evidence, and as a body says, "We believe this to be the case." And then we have the courts, one judge saying, "I disagree with 535 members of Congress. This bill passed with over 60% of the vote on both sides. That we're going to disagree with the publicly elected body, and we're going to impose our values. We're going to impose our own factual determination." That's not what judges are supposed to do. What judges are supposed to do is to see whether what the Congress actions are were within the bounds of the Constitution, not to put their point of view over the point of view of a publicly elected representative of the people.
The fact that anti-choice legislators are saying that because the president has signed this, it ought to be law is simply not constitutional also in itself. It is why we have separation of powers in this country. The courts have 30 years of litigation on this, and so 3 justices in 3 separate districts in 3 separate parts of this country have looked at all of the law that has gone before and have said, we find, based on all the precedent, based on what the law has said, that this ban is unconstitutional.
These individual judges are following the law as the Supreme Court has laid it out. The Supreme Court laid out in Doe v. Bolton that the restrictions on abortion cannot intrude upon the, quote, health of the mother, and the health includes this broad category that we spoke about, and this particular bill does not give in to that kind of false exception. It holds to if the life of the mother is in danger, which really is never the case.
I think that is the right outcome from the courts. And I think if the people who have overstepped in this, in fact, are the Congress, the anti-choice hardliners there, who believe that they can do this bill, even if it is unconstitutional, because the goal ultimately is to outlaw abortion as early as 12 weeks, 12 to 15 weeks. And that was what this deceptive piece of legislation was intended to do. And the courts have stepped in and said, you can't do that.
The overwhelming medical evidence that we received in the Congress and we put in the legislation was that this is a rogue procedure that is never medically necessary and in fact is dangerous to women's health, and therefore really falls outside of the Roe v. Wade prohibitions of limitations on abortions. And that's the argument we've made. We've made it to the courts. Right now the courts, the 3 cases that have been heard so far in New York, in Nebraska, and in San Francisco, all 3 of those cases were found that the law was unconstitutional, consistent with a Supreme Court case on partial birth abortion passed down just a few years ago. Those cases are all on appeal right now, and eventually one of those cases, I suspect, will work its way up to the Supreme Court.
I don't know that these cases will end up in front of the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court decides what cases it hears and what cases it doesn't hear, and it has repeatedly reaffirmed its position in Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, which are the 2 kind of sister cases, the cornerstone of abortion. One of these may work its way up. Then again, I can see the court simply declining to overrule lower courts by refusing to hear the appeal.
I think that's very extreme, and I don't really think that it's necessary to have 9 months to decide if you need to keep that baby or if you wanted to abort it.
I don't think that's right. I think that after a child could feel it, I don't think that you should abort.
It's kind of sad, though, because honestly the baby doesn't have any choice in the matter.
I had absolutely no idea that a woman could abort the baby up until 9 months or the end of the pregnancy.
Realistically, I don't think this bill will ever be enacted into law where it actually prohibits any abortions. I think it's destined, as are many of these kind of exceptions to Roe versus Wade, they end up bowing to the throne of Roe versus Wade, and in doing that, they become useless. They really don't prevent abortion. They don't stop people from having abortions. They're not even able to stop this one procedure when the overwhelming majority of American people think it ought to be prohibited, and even the overwhelming majority of Congress persons think it ought to be prohibited, and it was signed into law by the president.
Going forward, I believe, and I, of course, hope, as you ask, I believe that it will continue to be seen as unconstitutional. The bill has simply too many flaws. Again, you know, there's no exception for the health of the woman, and it's so broadly defined that it has the effect of outlawing so many different procedures. So this ban is a deceptive ban, it's an extreme ban, and it's unconstitutional. And I believe that will continue to be upheld.
I think we have an extraordinarily strong pro-abortion lobby in this country that has sold the bill of goods to really the courts. If they put these kinds of procedures up for a popular vote, they wouldn't get 20% of the vote. What they've done is they've carved out an exception for themselves in the court. They've won this one case, Roe versus Wade, and have been able to defend that for the last 33 years under the guise of women's rights or the right to choose and other euphemisms which are nothing more than excuses for killing unborn children.
I did 1,200 abortions in private practice, and I was committed to the idea that this was a woman's choice. Having gone through the experience of losing our own child and then suddenly seeing this in a very different light really haunted me for a while. And I had a sense of, what am I doing here? It really forced me to look seriously at what I was doing and not rely on those euphemistic terms. It's just a woman's choice anymore. You know, suddenly it was like, wait a minute, this is somebody's baby that I'm tearing apart. And is this really what I'm about as a person and as a physician?